Welcome back to Happy Hour Econ, where a comedian and an economist walk into a bar. I'm Lou Perez, the comedian.
And I'm Phil Magness, economist.
So, Phil, do you observe NCAA March Madness? Because we are right in the middle of some mass hysteria, some March Madness.
Indeed. I'm not typically a religious follower of March Madness. I'm more of a fair weather friend. So times in the past when a team that I care about jumps in and makes it to the tournament, yes, I'll follow that to the end. But the last time that happened was George Mason University's Final Four run when I was in grad school.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what team do you care about? How'd they do? Was it a whole team of economists?
No, it's a, remember GMU is a large state university, and we made a run all the way to the Final Four. It was really kind of seen as an upset. It was a team that had just barely made the tournament, and then it just started winning. And then we started noticing that they were winning. And next thing you know, the whole campus has erupted around it as, the thing to do, the thing to cheer on that year.
Yeah, there's something about winners that get people excited to watch them win. If your team sucks, it's a lot harder to bring new fans over to you, for sure. So with March Madness, obviously you have a lot of people doing the brackets, taking bets. When it comes to brackets, can you talk a little bit about mutually exclusive decisions?
Yeah. So mutually exclusive decision, it's kind of an economic concept. If you choose to do one thing and it basically takes away your opportunity to do something else, that's a mutually exclusive decision. If I choose to consume food in my refrigerator right now, it means that I cannot save that same food for later use further down the line. And if you think about it in the terms of brackets, every time you are picking a team on your bracket, you are basically precluding certain options in the future in the next round, in the round after that, and the round after that. Because I can't say, hey, I want University of North Carolina in the first round, and then it loses, say they lose that game, they do not advance to the second round. I can't then pick a different team to swap them out on my bracket in that second round because my decision's already been made, and the course determination of how the tournament plays out basically takes it off the table. So what you see is a succession of rounds. Everyone sets their brackets in that very first round, and half of those teams are going to lose. Half of the teams in that first round are going to lose, and maybe you were more prescient and you had a better initial round of selections than your friend, and more of your teams move on to the next round, so you still have a higher probability of getting someone all the way to the Final Four and then getting someone to the championship game. But if you're not very good at picking teams, you're not very good at weighing your brackets, well, each successive round eliminates and dwindles down the number of teams that you still have in the running. Your goal, if you're trying to gamble on this or you're trying to seed, you're in some sort of a betting arrangement with your friends in your office and your colleagues. When you're picking your brackets, you're trying to play a statistical game of maximizing the number of teams that make it to that Final Four, that make it down to the last two in the championship game, and then ultimately that win. So there's a lot of guesswork in here. There's a lot of probability at play, but the probability works in such a way that, once that team is out, once it's done, you can no longer resuscitate it further down the line. And if you pick wrong, if you voted against the University of North Carolina in your initial bracket, but they win, you can't reinsert them into your bracket later on because you've already made that decision to exclude them.
I've never participated in a March Madness bracket, but I do have leftovers in my fridge. And now I'm wondering if anybody out there, any listeners of Happy Hour Econ wants to put some money up and make some brackets for the leftovers I have, I could use your help because there's a lot of interesting sense happening right there. I read this thing about Warren Buffett offering $1 billion, I think with a B, to any employee who could pick the, quote, perfect bracket. And of course, he hasn't had to pay that yet. So,
this is, it's comparable to winning the lottery multiple times in a row because you're playing a statistical probability game. You have to be right every single time in every single team that goes into this, and through multiple different rounds. Just the guesswork of that alone basically disrupts the ability for anyone to win it through anything other than either being really, really skillful and then quite a bit of chance, because there's always upset games. Some team will come out and they'll have a bad night, even though they were the clear favorite to win. Well, that breaks your bracket.
Well, now I wonder, how many employees does Warren Buffett have? And how many permutations are there for the brackets? I guess, are we starting with 32? Is that what?
Yeah, well, 32 games in the first round, so 64 teams.
Oh my goodness!
So you have to pick 32 times. You have to be correct in that first round, and then that halves, and you have to be correct in the next round, and then that halves, and you have to be correct in the next round, all the way down to the championship game. And, what's the stat? 1 in 9.2 quintillion?
Oh, man. Okay, so I guess I will not be sending my resume to Walmart, because there's absolutely no chance I will win the perfect bracket, and I probably won't get hired either, because I don't have the skills to work at Walmart. Oh, I'm getting word from our producer. It turns out Warren Buffett does not own Walmart, but I think he should. And Warren, if you're listening right now, I think you should make an offer to buy Walmart. That's some free financial advice from your friend, comedian Lou Perez. But we're talking about March Madness, and there's obviously a lot of money at stake here. How much does the NCAA bring in every March? I wonder. It's got to be quite a figure.
It's certainly an economic moneymaker, especially, I think there are really two major events in college sports that are moneymakers, and that is the NCAA tournament in basketball, and then you have the football championship. Those are things that get national attention that is probably comparable to major league sports in baseball and hockey and basketball and football. So it's quite a bit of revenue sustaining that element of the NCAA. Meanwhile, all these more obscure sports are kind of in the backwater of it, even though so they're money losers, except for in some very rare circumstances that would draw something out into the open and get it national attention. But it's really those two sports. It's college football and the men's basketball tournament.
Yes, I think it's something like, if I'm reading this correctly, over $1 billion in revenue from March Madness alone. That's so wild. And I was wondering, okay, how much of that goes to the athletes themselves? Because there's a lot of people getting paid, people in TV, the coaches are getting paid.
Yeah, the coaches are often some of the highest paid employees at universities. Especially if they're major schools that are regular participants in the tournament or regular participants in championship and bowl games. These are often multi-million-dollar employees. Yet at the same time, there's an old tradition in the NCAA. This is an old organization that goes back to the turn of the last century in college sports when they were first emerging, that athletes themselves, for the kind of the honor and the spirit and the purity of the game, are not supposed to be paid. They're supposed to be student athletes. They're supposed to be in college first and foremost to learn knowledge and get a degree, and college sports are an amateur appendage to that. Now, they can be paid in return in scholarships that waive their tuition. So that is an element of it, but it's often, a scholarship. If you're talking $30,000 or $60,000 a year, depending on where you're going, that's pennies on the dollar compared to what a star basketball or football player in the NCAA could make if they were to go professional.
And think about that deal if you are playing a sport, a contact sport like football, where it's okay, you're going to be risking a lot of concussions, and the chances of you actually going pro where you would be paid a good amount of money,
millions of dollars, right?
Yeah,
right.
is pretty low. Like one of my younger brothers, he played football in college. years ago. And it was during a time where, if you got hit a little hard, you got right back in there. And it's, that was a different mentality of play. But it seems like things have changed a little bit.
Yeah. So this is basically in response to a lot of criticism, just of what you mentioned at the NCAA. These are often very risky sports, and you're in your athletic prime in those college years, and yet you're not getting paid for it. It's kind of like, wait a minute, well, who are you putting in all this work for this maybe a slim chance of going pro and continuing that on for another 10 or 15 years? That's a very narrow window to jump through. So in response to some of that criticism, NCAA adopted a rule, and it's referred to the Names, Image, Likeness Rule, or NIL. And this is basically an opportunity. What they say is that, basically college athletes, you can't get paid directly for the sport. You can't share in like this multi-billion-dollar ad revenue that's coming in from the tournament or the bowl game. But what you can do is you can become an influencer. You can become, you own the rights to your appearance, your name, your personal brand, characteristics around you. As long as you aren't using the actual game itself as your money-making mechanism, there are certain circumstances where you can contract out and become a monetizer of your name or reputation or your celebrity, essentially. So instead of getting paid directly for what you're doing in the sport, you get paid for your reputational value outside of the sport, which is, again, ironically, it's dependent upon how you perform on the court or the football field, but it's not directly getting paid for what you were doing on the court or the football field.
I looked up this thing. It's regarding revenue sharing, and of course, I Googled it, so no matter what comes up, it must be the truth. The House v. NCAA settlement allows participating institutions across the country to directly pay student athletes. Each year, schools can distribute up to 22% of the average revenue among schools in the ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, Pac-12, and SEC from media rights, ticket sales, and sponsorships, known as the revenue sharing cap. The cap for the 2025-26 academic year is $20.5 million per school. With a few potential exceptions, the cap will then increase 4% the following 2 years and will be reevaluated every 3 years over the duration of the 10-year settlement period. So I guess, we're talking about the NIL and then this new development. And now it's sort of like a lot of people are asking, is college worth it? Well, it seems like if you're a photogenic, athletic potential student, it might be pretty lucrative to do it.
There are absolutely opportunities now, but even 5 or 10 years ago, that you couldn't take advantage of. And this was always the claim about fairness. The athletes are putting in the work on the field or on the court. They're also the ones putting themselves at risk. But because of these old purity of the sports rules that also very conveniently worked in the favor of the institutions, the colleges themselves, college gets to keep the revenue and, build giant stadiums and market the brand of their logo, their team's logo and mascot. And there are all sorts of media rights that are tied up into that. So it's like the college is getting rich off of the backs of the student athletes that were previously restricted from monetizing in almost any way. In other words, if you violated these rules, you could be banned from college sports, and then that means you have no real route to professional sports in certain areas. So it's basically saying, young people, you have to put in your time and not get paid for it at its market value because we have a rule in place that says it's impure to do so. Capitalism's icky was basically the claim there.
Yeah, it's a tale as old as time. Anytime someone's making a profit, there must be something bad about it. Right.
Yes.
I do wonder with the list of, different schools and that sort of thing that, the NIL is one thing. I mean, you could be a student at a very small school and you could capture the hearts of America. But if you're a small school that's not making as much money as one of the Big Ten schools, it's like, how do you compete as far as bringing, new student athletes in? If they say,
right.
well, I can make money over at Tennessee, why am I going to go to this, kind of otherwise no-name school?
Yeah, sometimes they're referred to them as the mid-majors or the small schools, the ones that enter in those initial 64 teams in the tournament, but are not expected to make it to the final four, or not expected to make it to the championship, let alone. And that's why you hear these schools historically. It's always the Cinderella story. But oftentimes, one of the advantages that those types of teams could get is because, it used to be that the most you could offer an athlete was basically a tuition waiver or a free ride if they come play basketball or run track or, play whatever the sport happens to be. Here's your scholarship. That's what we can offer you in return. There was something of a leveling here, a leveling playing field here versus, the big, large state university that has all the media rights versus like the mid-major that isn't always going to guarantee its way into the championship game, but sometimes it could become that Cinderella story. So what it allowed is those mid-major teams to kind of take advantage of their scholarship money to draw in athletes on the margin that otherwise might have been overshadowed at a large school, or maybe they have other considerations when they're deciding where to go and picking their college. They go to a college because it has maybe better academics or better geography than they like, even though it's not always going to be the one that's guaranteed to win or make it to the championship game. So you've got all these types of considerations. When you enter in to an area where there is some sort of payment mechanism, I think we're going into an uncertainty phase in the sports market right now. We don't know how this is going to play out, but at least temporarily, it seems to give an advantage to the big market, well-known teams that have a major media following.
Gone are the days when the only way for a student to make money playing the game was to, do a little point shaving, work a little bit with the local mafia or something like that. We lost a lot, guys. But now, we have, there are athletes like DJ Burns, who a basketball player. He has like over 216,000 Instagram followers. He has sponsorships from like CVS. And I mean, it really goes to show you just how many markets social media has opened up for everybody. I mean, the idea that all this kid has to do is kind of go on his phone and say, "Hey, here I am at CVS," and then boom, he's making bank.
There's clicks, and then suddenly he's an influencer. So there is some creative destruction going on in the social media scene. Conventionally in sports history, the way to creatively destroy is you created a competitor league. And there are multiple instances of this in the 20th century. Also, we have in Major League Sports, some of the divisions are relics or holdovers from when competitor leagues were created, and they were often done around the basis of trying to attract star athletes. So the one that I always point to is the National Hockey League, the NHL. In the 1960s was notorious for having contractual rules that were unfavorable to the athletes. And one of these, it basically bound the athlete to the team that owned their contract. It had veto rights on whether that athlete could become a free agent and go somewhere else for better pay. They also had rules in place that restricted the age at which you can enter into the NHL. So famously, in the early 1970s, some competitors set up a different league called the World Hockey Association that didn't have those rules. And the idea was, maybe we don't have all the stars in the NHL, but we can get the young kids by lowering the age at which they can enter in. And we can offer them better contracts so they can go free agent and move between teams. And that brief period of competition, so the WHA folds in the late 1970s, and a few of the teams are merged into the NHL. But during that brief period of competition, it forced a change in the way the NHL did its contracts. And one of the most famous figures to emerge from that, a young hockey player by the name of Wayne Gretzky, comes up through the WHA and moves over into the NHL and becomes, until very recently, the all-time goal scorer. Alexander Ovechkin just recently passed him in the last year, but all because he took advantage of this creative destruction that was taking place that forced a market condition that improved the league.
I know one of the issues, at least when it comes to like the NBA, was a lot of young players kind of foregoing college and jumping right into the league. So I guess now, I mean, this is a way with these changes, it sort of opens up college and says, like, you know, you can be making money playing for this school before you eventually make it, you know, go to the NBA.
Yeah. It's kind of one of the oddities of the U.S. Sports systems or history as they evolved. In some sense, college was kind of like the original minor league for certain professional sports, especially the NFL and the NBA in particular. His college was seen as like it's where the young players go to, and you know, there's a long history of all-star players in the NBA, star football players coming out of college sports as well, that end up going to be like the Super Bowl winners or national championship winning teams. So, yeah, in that sense, it's a weird path trajectory. It has some historical evolution that emerged from the way that sports were disseminated in the early 20th century through college, and then the professionalization that follows. But it also imposes some institutional barriers and constraints, because it's not like, oh, you just go try out for the minor league team, get paid immediately, and you work your way up to the majors. You actually have to go through this rigid rule system of the NCAA, and that's why that rule system has really come under fire.
Yeah, and then you hear stories talking about hockey, college hockey in particular, where you have like a 25-year-old Canadian freshman, you know, who's been, you know, has like a family and kids basically back home, and then comes and plays as an undergrad, you know. I wonder what impact this will have on women's basketball, because it seems like women's basketball players in college now have an opportunity to potentially make more money than they would in the WNBA.
I mean, it's interesting. I think this is one of the uncertainties where, again, we start to see the creative destruction play out. Introducing some element of competition at that level, or some element to become an influencer, make money. You know, I think it's a wide open question. It's something I'd want to watch for. Now, for a variety of reasons, the women's basketball tournament is a smaller media market than the men's basketball tournament. That's just kind of a reflection of where consumers are. But at the same time, it's, you know, influencers allow you to make your own personal brand. The NIL rules allow you to make your own personal brand, which is kind of a way to break out of some of the constraints of that market.
Well, I'll tell you what, Phil and I. I'm going to speak for Phil, and he's going to say, "Don't you ever speak for me again." We are very open for for any NIL deals out there.
Right.
You know, if you have something that, you know, if you want, you know, these two athletes of the mind to be the face of whatever you have, you know, please reach out to us. We have, you know, Happy Hour Econ jerseys for sale. I will sign them. I will sign Phil's name.
I'll just say, you know, like, send me barbecue. Send both of us barbecue. I'd be happy to, you know, advertise that for you.
You know, you bring up so many of these things are so new, and it is going to be really interesting to see what impact it has on sport, on advertising, on all of this stuff, because, you know, sometimes you're going to get yourself into a position where you have athletes who might not be the best in the world, but they're so well liked that they end up getting a lot more light on them than better athletes. And it's like, well,
Right.
What impact does that have on the game? I've seen that in women's tennis and those sorts of things. So yeah, I wonder what impact it's going to have, kind of celebrity versus athleticism.
Yeah, well, it's the external margins. What are you doing off the field or off of the court? And, you know, sometimes that can also work in areas of notoriety. There are numerous stories from the history of sports of people that were as infamous off of the field and court as they were on the court, because sports attract some real characters. And, you know, it's whether the guy that keeps getting in fights at the bar, that could create kind of an image problem on something that's supposed to seen as like the majesty of the sport. And the guy's just kind of a jerk off of the court, or off of the football field, or off the baseball field, and has a record of notoriety behind him. And yet sometimes that notoriety does sell in the media space.
Yeah, and with the way technology is now, I mean, you have people who are, you know, streamers who are basically streaming their lives 24/7. It's going to be interesting to see what this kind of technology, this kind of all-present technology where figures are able to broadcast themselves out to the world has on, I mean, young kids who are playing.
Role models. Or not so role models.
Yeah, like, if you're broadcasting, yourself on, stream, and you're also a star athlete and all of that, what is life going to be like 20 years from now looking back?
Yeah, exactly. And I think when I was growing up, I had my favorite baseball players and my favorite hockey players and my favorite football players. And you think of them as role models. It's like, there's no one I would rather grow up to be is just like the best pitcher or the best quarterback, stuff like that. But you knew them mainly from their performance on the field. And, a few years later, when I got a little wiser to the world, I'd start saying, well, some of these people are not all that great as upstanding citizens in their personal lives off of the field. And it makes you start to reconsider your role models. Well, now, if that's all broadcast 24/7 online, it enters into a different media landscape. I think the world is awash in influencers right now. Some of them are very entrepreneurial and doing great and interesting things, whether it's like, making YouTube videos that have weird stunts on them or jokes and gags that go viral, and then suddenly that person is making a lot of money in ad revenue based on the number of clicks that they've created, or TikTok or X. There's all sorts of different platforms where this is now viable. But it also could be a business model that you get a lot of clicks by attaining notoriety on one of those platforms. So the influencer space is also filled with, I think, what we refer to as slop or dreck or garbage. People creating bad AI cat videos, not because it has artistic merit, but because they know that bored people will sit there and click on them all day. And these things go viral. And kind of flood the online space with not very useful or interesting information, but it takes up a lot of bandwidth. And I keep seeing these memes going around, and there's a picture of like a bad cat video, and it's like, this is why RAM is $900. It's an interesting online economy that's emerging onto itself, separate and apart from how a traditional athlete would be paid or made a celebrity because they hit home runs. Now they're a celebrity because they're an influencer in addition to hitting home runs.
Well, they say never meet your heroes, but I'll tell you what, I get to meet my hero every week here on Happy Hour Econ. You guys can guess who I'm talking about. Phil, thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely.
You guys, will see you next week for an all-new episode of Happy Hour Econ.